Representative Thomas Huntley has played a significant role in shaping Minnesota's healthcare system. The Freedom to Breathe Act, which bans indoor smoking in public places, is one of his trademark pieces of legislation, and he sponsored a bill during the 2013 legislative session that expanded medical assistance coverage in Minnesota. Huntley also sponsored legislation that prevents water from being diverted from the Great Lakes to other parts of the country or world. The United States Congress took up the historic action and passed it. Now, after 22 years of service in the Minnesota House of Representatives, Huntley is stepping down after the 2014 session. Thank you, Representative Huntley, for joining us today.
Pleasure to be here.
Why are you not running for re-election?
Well, my wife and I had a long discussion for about a year about this, and there's just certain things that I want to do and focus on, and when you're in the legislature, even just in Health and Human Services, there's too many things you have to deal with, and you can't focus. And what I'm really interested in is expanding the primary care and making sure that the new healthcare system works in rural Minnesota. And I would just like to focus on those two things. And primary care is a huge issue nationally and in Minnesota because we don't have enough primary care docs, and it's going to get worse shortly. So that is something that's going to take a lot of work, and Minnesota needs to be in the lead. And so I'm looking for some way to work on that.
As you reflect on your years in the House, what do you see as your greatest legislative achievement?
Probably the biggest one was the healthcare reform stuff that we started in 2007, 2008, and into 2010, which sort of got Minnesota ahead of the game on healthcare reform. A lot of what we did ended up in the buried in the Affordable Care Act to sort of change the way we pay for healthcare so that we're paying for results rather than for just services. And Minnesota was way ahead of the game on that one, and I think that's the most important thing I did. Then I also had the Freedom to Breathe Act, which I think is very important. And probably the lesser known one that was very important to me was the Great Lakes Compact. We were the first state to pass that, and that's the 8 Great Lakes states plus the 2 Canadian provinces. And ultimately had to be passed by the feds as well, which they've done, and that's to guarantee the future of the Great Lakes.
What are you going to miss about the House of Representatives?
You know, there's still some healthcare things that need to be done. We'll get a few done this year, I think. And just the personal relationships that you develop with some individuals. It's an interesting thing. What I won't miss is sitting on the House floor and listening to 12 hours of debate.
So what advice would you give to the next person who fills your seat?
I would say to keep in touch with your community. A lot of us were on city councils before we got into the legislature, and it's very useful to have an understanding of how your city works and what the issues are. And so if they don't have that background, well, they ought to pay attention to what's going on in their city. But I would also tell them to try to, you can't know everything, and you got to focus.